Now that I have completed my planning, research and promotional package, I need to evaluate each production, looking at the ways in which they challenge and develop conventions and the theories, and looking at my audience feedback. Question 1. In what ways does your media product use, develop or challenge forms and conventions of real media projects? During my research, I found that it was essential to include narrative theories within my media text. This would ensure that my project followed the necessary conventions and would help my audience to fully comprehend the subliminal messages I was attempting to convey. Furthermore, Bart's Enigma code was implemented into all 3 posters that I analysed, as it could be argued that this is the most powerful way in connecting with the audience. Creating an Enigma code within a media text forces the audience to question their own thoughts and consider the different messages that the posters are conveying. My focus group claimed that the media text used on paranormal activity, what happens when you sleep, felt like a direct question and left them wondering what did happen when they slept. Additionally, they felt that the enigmatic tagline, "Don't see it alone," forced them to question why it was so scary. This shows how paranormal activity was successful in enticing the audience, and I therefore decided to develop this convention and include it in my own design. For example, my tagline was, "Based on a true story." This automatically created a sense of realism, thus heightening the overall thrill factor of the film. Positive film reviews on the poster often help to promote the film and appeal to a wider audience. My questionnaire results showed me that 80% of my sample group were more tempted into seeing a film after reading positive reviews written by a prestigious source, as their opinion would be more valid because they were an expert in the field. After completing my textual analyses, I found that paranormal activity used a film review to promote itself. I did initially intend to follow this convention, however, I ended up not including it at all in my final poster production. I found that the overall layout was much more effective because I'd kept it simple, which aroused mystery and suspense, mirroring the film's narrative. Therefore, I decided to challenge convention by not having a film review on my final design. As I carried out my textual analyses into 3 existing film posters, I noticed that the general colour scheme used dark colours connoting fear, uneasiness and disruption. It was evident that black was the main colour, representing darkness and the unknown, but I also realised that other colour schemes were used to represent the narrative of the film. Therefore, I needed to consider my subgenre before deciding on the house colour for my production package. My title, The Myth of the Witch Cult, confirms that my film would be focused around the supernatural and be more suited towards the black and white colour scheme. However, there are also horror elements involved, so I wanted to include red to portray this. The decision was consistent with what my target audience wanted, as 75% claimed that they preferred to see a red and black or a black and white colour scheme. I believe that the overall appearance of my poster is successfully represented by the narrative structure and clearly establishes my film as a horror genre. I found the majority of my feedback claimed the most important feature on a poster is the image. Therefore, I knew it was essential to capture the right shot in order to accurately reflect my narrative and the overall feel of my film. Looking at 3 posts I analysed, I found the main character was always featured, and it was clear that this was very conventional. Quarantine and the Blair Witch Project used extreme close-ups of their characters to portray their emotions and the fear that they felt. Paranormal Activity used an extreme long shot to establish the environment, as this was an important feature in that film. I developed this convention by using my own close-up to show the character, but I left her expression neutral. Therefore, it was difficult to apply Todora's theory of equilibrium to the image. It could be argued the lightness of her face portrays her as pure and innocent, juxtaposing her against a dark background which could represent her evil and threatening surroundings. Alternatively, she could be interpreted as the villain, as she could appear remorseless and cold by showing little expression. This means that I can successfully apply Bart's Code of Enigma to the image. Furthermore, I created the background by using trees taken from a separate image. This establishes the environment as a forest setting, connoting mystery and suspense, typical elements of a horror genre. As prop would suggest, the female could be described as the pawn of the state, trapped in the institution. I used a black and white effect to present contrasting imagery, which would be consistent with Levi Strauss's theory of binary opposite, e.g. light versus dark and good versus evil. The silhouette of the person reaching out further connotes mystery, as you are unable to tell who it is and what they are reaching for. When it came to creating the title for my film, I had to consider the typography, colour and its position on the page. After looking to existing posters as my guidance, I decided on placing my title about 3/4 of the way down the page, still leaving the room for the image which dominated the top half. I used a conventional font of Times New Roman for my title, and used the conventional colour scheme of black and red and white to During my research, I found that 75% of my sample group would prefer to have the film trailer embedded on the website, and this concept is reinforced by my textual analyses which showed me that this would be a good idea. Paranormal Activity had their trailer automatically available, which played as soon as the site had loaded. In Quarantine and the Blair Witch Project, this was not the case, as there was a link which directed them to the trailer instead of it being embedded on the site. I decided to follow the convention used by Paranormal Activity and include the trailer on the website, because this would mean easy access and availability to my audience. It was also consistent with my focus group, who agreed that it was easier to have the trailer there readily available to them. As I carried out my research into existing film websites, I noticed the three that I analysed failed to have images of the main characters on the website, and I therefore challenged this convention by using a photo of my character as the main feature on the final site design. I knew that it would be conventional to include narrative hints on the website as a way to promote the film, and this is something that I noticed my three existing websites did. However, I challenged this convention as well by failing to reveal too much about the storyline, aside from the information given in my trailer. I found that in order to represent the nature of my narrative, I needed to keep the layout simple to reflect a sense of mystery. I used the same image on the website that I used on the poster as a way of tying both media texts together and keeping the house style consistent throughout the production package. The silhouette shows a person reaching out for help, or, alternatively, reaching out to attack. Therefore, Barth's Code of Enigma can be applied here, as it is unclear whether this represents the villain or the hero of the narrative. Prop could suggest that they are portrayed as the pawn of the state, trapped in the institution and unable to escape, thus provoking their reaction to reach out for help. It is hard to apply to Doros' theory of equilibrium here, as it appears to have skipped straight to a state of disturbance, skipping out an establishment of peace at the beginning. Although other websites did not use imagery, I found that it worked well with the feel that I was trying to create and reflected the narrative. When it came to deciding on which links to include on my final website, it was important to understand what would be successful and what links would be pointless and a waste of valuable space. Therefore, I had to look closely at the links that were included on the three websites that I analysed and carry out primary research to find out what my consumers wanted. The first thing that I wanted to find out was whether sound was important to include. On Quarantine's website, you could hear sirens, which reflected the chaotic atmosphere of the narrative. However, in my questionnaire, I found the majority of people didn't think it was important to have this, so I decided to include a sound off/on button, which would allow my audience the freedom to choose themselves whether they wanted to listen to it, preventing it from being compulsory. My results also showed me that cast listings was a fairly popular link with my consumers, but I decided not to include this in my final design. My film is based on a handheld camera format. I didn't think it would be conventional for my audience to meet the characters, because this would eliminate any sense of realism behind the narrative. In order to heighten the realism behind the narrative, I included links to the full mythology of the witch cult and the aftermath of what happened to the characters. This rich, in-depth information and narrative follow-through engages the audience on a much deeper level, as they feel more involved and educated about the background of the film. Towards the bottom of the page are links to social networking sites Twitter and Facebook. This would allow the audience to share the page, subsequently spreading the word of mouth of the film and generating a hype to aid its overall success. Viral marketing is becoming a huge phenomenon within the film industry, not only because it's cheaper, but because it spreads messages quickly to a chosen target audience. This is a particularly common way of marketing amongst low-budget productions, and I found that it was a consistent feature within 2 out of 3 of the existing websites that I analysed. In the top right-hand corner, I included a feature which would allow my audience to find the closest cinema near to them that was shown in the film. Although this is something that I did not find to be conventional within the existing websites that I analysed, I thought it would be useful for my film to promote itself and potentially boost ticket sales. I also included the option for people to sign up for the newsletter, which would be free of charge and would help keep the audience's attention. The most obvious convention that I noticed when I was analysing my existing promotional packages was that the colour scheme remained consistent from one media text to the next. The results that I got from my questionnaire reinforced this, as 95% argued that this was an essential factor to consider. I used the same imagery, which meant that the general black and white colour scheme was the same as the website as it was on the poster. I also ensured that I stuck to using black, red and white for the typography to maintain this consistency. It was hard to establish a conventional website layout for a horror film, as all 3 of the existing websites that I analysed varied greatly. For example, Paranormal Activity had very little in the way of interactive links, and the page was simply dominated by the trailer, which was compulsory for the audience to watch. The Blair Witch Project gave very little narrative hints away, maintaining a sense of mystery which accurately reflected its ghostly narrative. Quarantine was more animated and included a lot more detail, but all of these layouts were suitable for the type of film that they were producing. Therefore, I needed